The dock is still dark. Somewhere below the waterline, the engine turns at low idle, a slow mechanical pulse that moves through the steel and into the pier. Mist sits flat on the water. Nothing has loaded yet, but the ramp is down and the first pallet is already waiting. This is British Columbia's coast, not the postcard version, but the working one. Narrow inlets that stretch 60, 80, 100 kilometers inland. Villages that have no road connection, and no highway, no rail line. The only way in and the only way out is by water. Communities like Bella Bella, Ocean Falls, Hartley Bay, Clem2. Some hold 300 people, some hold fewer. They depend on weekly or bi-weekly freight runs for everything: food, medicine, building materials, fuel. Remove the coastal freighter and the supply chain collapses entirely. But the vessel making this run is the Uchuk 3, a converted World War II minesweeper now operating as a freight and passenger carrier out of Gold River on the west coast of Vancouver Island. She is 40 meters long. Her hull, built in 1942, still crosses these waters every week. Loading begins at first light. The air temperature is 3 degrees Celsius. A steady rain falls. Crew members in high-visibility gear move pallets by forklift across a wet dock surface. Cardboard boxes, so plastic crates, medical supply containers, all recorded on manifest, all bound for specific stops along the inlet route. Fuel drums are the most critical cargo. Diesel for generators, propane for heating. In communities without grid electricity, these barrels represent everything. Light in January darkness, heat when temperatures drop to -10 overnight. They are loaded last, secured against the stern rail, and offloaded first at every stop. By 0700, the vessel is loaded. The manifest has been checked twice. The captain, 22 years running this route, walks the deck once before going to the wheelhouse. He does not rush. He checks the tie-downs, checks the ramp, checks the weather printout taped beside the chart table. Then he starts the engine. The engine on the Uchuk 3 is a diesel unit producing approximately 500 horsepower. It is not a fast ship. Her cruising speed is around 9 knots. But in these narrow channels, where the water is cold, the currents run hard, and the depth can shift from 40 meters to 8 in less than a mile. Speed is not the priority. Accuracy is. The BC coast contains over 27,000 kilometers of shoreline. Much of it is deeply indented, fjords carved by glaciers over 10,000 years ago. These inlets can be 40 kilometers long and less than 2 kilometers wide. Navigation demands full attention. The helmsman does not look away from the chart. The first stop is Tarsis, a former mill town near the head of Tarsis Inlet, 60 kilometers from Gold River by water. Population, around 250 people. The dock here is old, the planking is grey and worn, but it holds and the community has been waiting for this delivery since Monday. Docking in a narrow inlet requires the captain to read the current and the wind simultaneously. There are no tugboats here, no harbour pilot. The captain brings the ship in himself. A controlled drift. The engines working against the current, bow angled slightly upstream, stern line thrown by the deckhand to a resident waiting on the dock. Offloading takes 35 minutes. The fuel drums go first, rolled by hand across the dock. Then the food pallets, canned goods, dry goods, dairy, produce packed in insulated boxes. A woman in a rain jacket signs the manifest. She does not say much. She has done this before many times. What arrives matters as much as what leaves. But the vessel also carries outbound freight, packages to be shipped south, medical samples destined for labs in Vancouver, occasionally a vehicle or piece of heavy equipment being returned for repair. The coastal freighter moves in both directions. Lines are cast off. The engine increases to a head, slow. The vessel moves back into the channel. Total time at dock, 41 minutes. Next stop is 48 kilometers up the inlet, a logging camp that takes delivery once every 2 weeks without exception. A rain intensifies through mid-morning. Visibility drops to roughly 2 kilometers. The radar becomes the primary instrument. The GPS track is set. The captain watches the depth sounder. The channel floor in this section climbs from 30 meters to 12. He reduces speed to 7 knots. Logging camps operate on tight margins. Equipment parts that don't arrive on time mean machines that don't run. Machines that don't run mean crews that are idle. The freight on this ship includes hydraulic fittings, replacement filters, a welding rod, and 300 kilograms of foodstuffs for the cookhouse. It has been ordered precisely, nothing extra, nothing missing. The logging camp dock appears through the rain at 11:40. It is industrial and functional. No community building, no welcoming committee. Just a dock foreman in a hard hat and a forklift waiting at the top of the ramp. The ship ties up in under 4 minutes. Offloading here is fast and silent. No pleasantries. The foreman checks each item against his printed list. The hydraulic fittings are confirmed. The filters are confirmed. The food goes last. Packed into a rusted metal cart and wheeled toward the cookhouse without comment. The foreman nods once. The lines are cast off. There are vessels like the Uchuk 3 operating along multiple BC coastal routes. Some are newer, purpose-built coastal freighters with roll-on, roll-off decks and greater cargo capacity. The Northern Transport class vessels operating out of Port Hardy carry up to 180 tons of deck cargo and run routes as far north as the Bellacoola Valley and Haida Gwaii. Haida Gwaii, formerly the Queen Charlotte Islands, is an archipelago 130 kilometers off the BC mainland. It has a permanent population of approximately 4,500 people. Its road network does not connect to the provincial highway system. Everything arrives by sea or air. The sea route handles bulk. The air handles emergency. The freight run to Haida Gwaii departs Prince Rupert approximately twice weekly. The crossing is not sheltered. This is open ocean, Hecate Strait, one of the most hazardous stretches of water on the North Pacific coast. The strait averages wave heights of 2 to 3 meters in winter. The vessels must be built for it. On crossings like this, the crew works in rotation. Someone is always in the wheelhouse. Cargo is checked for shift. Containers secured to the deck with 4-point lashing rigs are re-inspected every 2 hours. In 3-meter swells, a shifted load can destabilize a vessel of this size within minutes. Not every vessel on this coast is a freighter. The BC Ferries system operates over 35 vessels across 25 routes, but its mandate is passengers and light vehicles. What it does not carry, bulk freight, heavy machinery, hazardous materials, refrigerated cargo, but those categories fall to the small commercial operators who have worked these routes for decades. Winter complicates every aspect of coastal freight operations. Daylight in northern BC in December is less than 8 hours. Tides run higher, with a range of up to 5 meters in some inlets. Low-pressure systems move in from the Pacific with little warning, bringing winds that can exceed 50 knots and seas that close the strait entirely. When weather closes a route, communities wait. There is no alternative supply chain. A 3-day delay in delivery means 3 additional days until fresh produce, 3 additional days until medical supplies move, 3 additional days until the fuel drum destined for the community generator arrives. Communities absorb the delay. They have no other option. The crew of a coastal freighter on the BC run typically numbers between 4 and 8 people, depending on vessel size. Captain, first mate, engineer, deckhand or 2. For longer routes with passenger accommodation, a steward. And these are not large crews. Every person on board carries multiple roles. The engineer spends most of the voyage below decks. and the main engine requires monitoring at regular intervals: oil pressure, coolant temperature, exhaust back pressure. On older vessels, this means physical inspection rounds every 90 minutes. The engine room on the Uchuk-3 is compact and loud and warm in a way the rest of the ship is not. By early afternoon, the weather begins to ease. The rain reduces to drizzle. The cloud ceiling lifts slightly. Through the channel ahead, a gap in the hills reveals a longer view. Grey water, dark forest, a distant waterfall thread descending an otherwise vertical rock face. The landscape here operates at a scale that makes the vessel seem very small. The third stop is a First Nations community, Quietest, on the northwest coast of Vancouver Island. The community relies entirely on the weekly freight run, or the vessel ties alongside the community dock at 14:30. 3 residents have already arrived with a hand truck. An elder sits on a bench at the dock edge, watching. She has been watching this ship come in for 30 years. Medical supply deliveries are handled with particular care. Temperature-sensitive medications, insulin, certain antibiotics, travel in insulated bags marked with priority stickers, as they are secured separately from general cargo and handed directly to the community health worker waiting on the dock. There is no pharmacy here. This delivery is the pharmacy. The economics of coastal freight on the BC run are tight. Fuel costs are the dominant variable. A vessel like the Uchuk-3 burns approximately 40 litres of diesel per hour at cruising speed. A full 12-hour run day costs upward of $600 in fuel alone. Add crew wages, maintenance and insurance. And the margins require that every run be full. Government subsidy programs exist to support remote community freight links in BC. The provincial government's ferry service contribution agreement funds some routes deemed essential. Without public support, several of the most isolated routes would not be commercially viable. The communities they serve would be left without supply. Afternoon, the vessel makes its way back down the inlet, running south. The cargo hold is lighter now, a few outbound crates, medical samples on ice, an engine part removed for repair. The return leg of the run is quieter. Less cargo, fewer stops. The crew uses the time to eat, rest where possible, and check the vessel's systems. Wildlife is part of the routine on these routes. Bald eagles are unremarkable here. A dozen may pass overhead during a single run. Harbour seals surface beside the hull and are ignored. Humpback whale sightings in Quietest Sound are noted but not announced. The crew has seen it all many times before. They keep their eyes on the water. The light begins to fail around 1600. The navigation lights come on automatically. The green starboard lamp reflects on the channel water in a long rippled line. Inside the wheelhouse, the temperature is comfortable. The heating system is functional. Outside, the air has dropped to 1 degree Celsius. The channel narrows again before Gold River. The captain has been on the water for 14 hours, and he eats a late meal standing at the galley counter, sandwiches and hot coffee, while the first mate takes the helm. He will sleep on board tonight. Tomorrow, the same run begins again. Not the same stops, but the same character of work. Steady, functional. Uninterrupted. Gold River comes into view at 17:45. The dock lights are on. A figure waits on the pier. The dock agent, completing the day's paperwork. Lines are thrown. The engine is reduced to idle. But the vessel settles against the dock. The run is finished. 240 nautical miles. 9 communities served. 14 hours and 23 minutes underway. The BC coastal freight system is not visible to most British Columbians. It runs in the background in narrow inlets far from the highway, in communities that do not appear on most maps, in the holds of ships that most people have never seen. It is essential in the way that essential things often are, unnoticed until it stops. Tomorrow, the manifest will be prepared again. Fuel drums counted, crates checked against the order lists from communities that sent their requests 3 days ago. The dock will be cold in the morning, the ramp will go down, the first pallet will be waiting. The work continues the way it has continued for decades, quietly, reliably, without recognition. The tide will turn before sunrise, the engine will start at the same time it started today. The ramp will go down. The community on the inlet will be waiting, as they have always waited, for the sound of the hull in the water, the knock of a line against a dock cleat, the slow arrival of everything they need. The ship will come. It always does.